Kia ora, or should I say, all right, mate. Welcome to Tarmac. I'm Dave.
I'm Matthew, and behind us here is the one car with 4 different models. That's right, it's the MG4.
And you're right, it's the vehicle that actually bridges the gap between ICE and EVs. It is the very affordable MG4. Come, let's take a look at this. Okay, just like the brand itself, I'm really leveraging my British roots because MG has been basically a stalwart of the UK or the British car brand since 1924. And like I said, even though it's now a Chinese brand, it still is leveraging off that history. And this brand really, since that moment in time when it was first launched, has made cars affordable in all areas, particularly in the performance angle. So if those of you remember the MG, the 2-seaters with the topless stuff, really making it sort of an affordable sports car. And in many ways, this is it. So that ethos has come forward. This is an affordable sports car or a sports hatch that's actually an EV as well. So lots going on. As Matthew points out, this MG4, there's 4 variants of it right now. So you've got a smaller capacity 51 kilowatt hour battery. There's this one, which is the 64 kilowatt hour battery with basically 2 trims. And then there's a 77 kilowatt hour battery. So there's plenty going on as far as performance, well, battery range and things like that. But coming back to this vehicle here, it's got a whole new design, and if you've looked at the ZS's and things like that that have come out recently that look arguably quite normal, this has got a much more sportier look about it. And the design actually is from a guy called Oleg Son, and really does have a whole new footprint of it. I mean, looking at it, even well, you'll see down the side, it looks like it's in motion even when it's standing still, and I quite like that. Round the front here, very new design. You've got a U-shaped bonnet here that's got a lovely shape to it. The lights here, LED lights. So what you've got here is 28 LEDs across here for the DRLs, and also when it comes to the indicators there, 38. So plenty of lights going through here. And also this grille down the bottom here is intelligent. I've started asking it questions. It's still not as smart as me, but it does open and close when it needs to. Now, when it comes to car colours, you know, I'm actually quite partial to the way that car companies name them. With the MG, what they've done is they've used sort of British inspired names. So you've got Dover White, you've got Brixton, you've got Camden, and I actually quite like the Brighton Blue. It's actually quite cool. But what they've done here is a volcano orange, and there are no volcanoes in the UK that I'm aware of, but it does make this vehicle flow very nicely, particularly when you've got the contrasting black roof and the contrasting black sills down here. Oh, and the mirror caps. The wheels themselves, they're 17 inches, and they've got this sort of aerodynamic finish to them to make sure that it does flow again nicely. And we've got disc brakes on front and rear, as opposed to some of the other vehicles that don't have that, which does compromise the sort of range a little bit, but I'll get to the range very soon. The rest of it, there's a blackened out or privacy glass down the back here, but it's also just very normal looking, but yet just very sleek. It's got a lovely shape to it. Now, for those that are worried about getting this hot hatch into their garage, dimensionally it's 4.3 meters long, 1.5 meters high, so actually I can see over it. Gotta love that. And also when it comes to the wheelbase, 2.7 meters, so there's actually plenty of stuff, or plenty of room inside, but Matthew will show you that in a while. You can see I'm actually hanging on to this twin aero spoiler. It's the funkiest looking thing. Look at that. Offers plenty of aerodynamics, and like I said, very cool. That's what you get when you get to the Essence trim, which is what we've got here. The Excite one has got It's not as excitable actually. And the other thing is you've got a stoplight up here, very motorsport inspired. Round the back here, these lights, look at this lovely light bar that goes across the back here, and also at the top here you've got some design stuff. Good old Oleg, he's really done very well with this sort of design back here, the MG badge, and also sort of very sleek sort of rear valance back here. What you've got here, there's no kicker tailgate, so if you're starting to do this you'll look silly. You'll be doing the sort of Morris dancing rather than a sort of normal dance, and opens up here to sort of plenty of room here with a little bit of a separate section under here so you can hide things, but reasonable sized boot space. Anyway, let's see what powers this. Now underneath this vehicle here you've actually got a very slim battery pack. It's around about 115 millimeters, so it's tiny but goes all the way across, obviously down the bottom here. But what it is, it's this one has got a 64 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is good for around about 435 kilometers of range. That in turn is strapped to an electrical motor on the back, which is good for 150 kilowatts of power and 250 newton meters of torque, which is all pretty good. And actually when it gets off the mark, it's 7.2 seconds 0 to 100, so quite sprightly too. It'll also plug in, or actually you can actually plug your device into here, so you can actually got a vehicle to load here, so you can actually plug your washing machine here or dishwasher or anything in here, so start using the appliances from here. Not bad. Anyway, speaking of things that should be plugged in, Matthew's inside and he'll show you what's going on in there.
Well, I could certainly do with a recharge. It's been a long afternoon, but the interior of this MG4 is the perfect place to do that in. Because, well, firstly, for a cold, windy day like today, you've got heated seats for both the driver and passenger, heated steering wheel as well, and of course an air conditioning that works really nicely as well to keep this cabin at temperature. Speaking of the materials and sort of the cabin, well, things are actually quite well made around here. You know, shaking the center console and all these sort of floating bits, it feels well screwed together. And as you can tell from just a quick look over, that the design language is very different to that of the MG ZS EV and those sort of generation of MG cars. This feels sort of all new, almost like a different brand entirely, and that's even more apparent when we get to that screen, which we'll get to in a moment. Going back to that design language, as you saw, all new, you've got this sort of floating control center here with a wireless charging pad on the top there. You've got your rotary dial for the different gears, your handbrake, and a little indicator there which says MG Electric to remind you of what's underpinning this car in particular. Storage spaces as well are generous down the bottom here. You've got your 2 cup holders, flat storage here which you can cover up, another little net here, and of course a generous under armrest storage space over there. And not to forget, of course, that the door bins are fairly cavernous in size too. The other thing for charging, so not just the wireless charging, but you also have the USB charger underneath there, as well as your 12-volt power socket to charge up your other devices too by wire rather than wirelessly. The other thing to point out is not available in this model, but in the model up, so the 77 kilowatt hour range topper, you do get that massive glass panoramic sunroof as well, which takes up, I think, something like 80 to 90% of the roof space, so you do get a lot of light coming in from that side. On another note, back to this model, the use of plastics is pretty good. You've of course got your hard plastics up the top there, but some softer stuff in the middle, and of course softer stuff on the top of the dashboard there as well. And it does have a recycled feel to some of the plastics too. Speaking of the plastics and the materials in here, the seats, they are comfortable and quite soft too. You've got some decent bolstering on the side, as well as some contrast blue stitching to add to that slightly sporty feel that the MG4 brings to the MG brand. Now, this central infotainment screen is a 10.25 inch floating infotainment screen, and as you can see here, it certainly got that sort of effect that it's coming away from the dashboard. The other thing is it's got a mix of not just obviously the touch screen there, but you do have a bunch of shortcut buttons here for all of your essential controls. So a shortcut to bring you back to the home screen, which is this. your 2 volume buttons, obviously your hazards, and then your various defrosting for the front and rear windscreen, and of course a shortcut for your air conditioning unit too. Now going up to the screen, you can see there's another bar there with various shortcut menus, but pretty much everything that you need to interact with is on this home screen. Your navigation, your audio input, charging levels, and then of course a key benefit of this system is the Apple CarPlay and Android Auto there, both wireless, both inbuilt as well. Flick over to the next screen and there's a few different things I want to pick up on, in particular on this MG4. So firstly, if I go into the vehicle screen, there is of course this driving, of which there are several modes. You do also have one pedal driving and an energy saving mode. But move over to the next one, and that's your MG Pilot, which gives you access to 10 active safety systems plus a whole suite of other ones as well, in terms of your alerts and various different modes to keep you safe. So they certainly have made that a massive focus, which is occupant safety here. But it's not just all about safety. The interior of this MG4 does add a few luxuries too, which if I swipe to this screen here and go to the settings menu like so, and head down to the audio or rather volume setting, scroll down to the bottom and you do get firstly a virtual subwoofer, and then you get the Alchemist 3D sound, which as you can see there, SAIC Motor, which is the parent company of MG, teamed up with Alchemist to really ramp up the sound processing and audio output for the experience of the MG4. So some quite intelligent and a more luxury oriented audio experience, if you like. As you can see there, the digital instrument cluster also has a similar sort of floating effect to it, emerging from the dashboard, if you will. The screen itself, well, there's a lot of information, but well, it is an electric car and quite an intelligent one, so there is a lot of information to convey. But it is broken up into distinct sections, as you can see. So on the right there, your trip information from the last charge, and you can actually alternate what you see as well. In the middle, you've got your speed as well as your battery charge level and range. And then on the left side, your adaptive cruise control or general sort of MG Pilot feedback, which shows you the other cars on the road and their positioning and all of that stuff. Note also the Dover white MG4 displayed over there, which all it's missing is just a bunch of bluebirds over the top. Below that, you've got your gear indicator, and then of course your mode indicator. We are in sport right now because of course it is a slightly warm hatchback, and a certain disposition certainly reflected by the steering wheel, because look at that, it's just a twin spoke unit, and it's got a flat bottom and a flat top, so can be a little bit confusing if it's the wrong way around, but that MG badge is there to help you remind you rather of what the right way around is. The steering wheel not only is sporty and looks good, but it is heated, and you've got a suite of buttons on either side, of course, for controlling firstly the instrument cluster in front, and then of course for your voice controls and things like that too. So they have really made intelligent use of the real estate space that they have available here.
So hi, I'm Harry, once again jumping from behind the cameras to come and test the rear seats of the MG4. So climbing inside, gone are the days where the small hatchbacks would not have enough room. I am 6'2", and there is plenty of knee room and also head room here for me. And I think that 3 people could definitely have a comfortable trip. So yeah, hats off to MG.
So let's briefly touch on first MG's electric history. So the MG ZS EV, when it was launched, became firstly their first ever a fully electric vehicle, and secondly it was also the cheapest electric car in New Zealand at the time. Now that title has since changed hands a little bit, but MG have, you know, all along wanted to regain ownership of that title, and with this MG4, the base spec MG4, they have done so. This is not the base spec, it adds a few more comforts and luxuries and stuff like that, but I think overall as a package it represents really good value.
Yeah, it really does, and it does. I mean, their main target is to bridge that gap between ICE and electric. So, really taking the decision as to whether, the big price difference between having an ICE-powered vehicle versus EV is now sort of virtually off the table. So, I think they've done really well. So this one's obviously a little bit more expensive, but to have a car that's sitting around sort of 40 grand for an EV with 350 kilometers of range is pretty good.
Absolutely, usable enough for most people. I think the average daily commute for New Zealanders, or Aucklanders specifically, something like 50 Ks. So even still, the MG4, the base spec MG4 will take you a few days before needing a charge. And then, I mean, you step up to a model like this and it adds, some nicer seats. It adds, the cool thing is that I was going to say adds colors, but it doesn't actually, because the colors are firstly no cost options, and that's all of the colors, and you can get them across all models. So it's not like, as you move up, you get stuff like that added on. They have really made as much of the extras available as far across the range as they can.
Then there's the way this car drives. I mean, let's have a look around. Visibility out the front is really good. You've got a nice big windscreen, lovely sloping A-pillar. There's little small quarter panels around here for glass, so you can see plenty of there. And the door mirrors they're reasonably in size. The rear, though, is really compromised. The sloping roofline back there means a small glass footprint out the back, and also when you put in, I don't know why they've got 3 headrests, it really does mean that you'll have to rely on what's coming through the screen here for the reversing camera.
And just as well that it does also have 360-degree camera views, so you do get that additional angle of safety, if you like, and also the ease, the comfort of knowing what's around your surroundings. And I think in general MG Pilot does a good job of that, and frankly is an improvement on the previous generation of MG Pilot systems that we have seen.
I agree. I know you remarked on it earlier, actually, when we were driving. The lane keep assist can be a little bit aggressive, can push you over. It's not as bad as the original, the second generation MG ZS, but it's still relatively keen to make sure you stay in your lane, which I guess is not a bad thing, but it's probably something I would switch off.
And again, that's not the only feature that has been improved with this new generation, if you like, of MG cars, and in particular MG EVs. Something that we remarked on with the ZS EV in particular was the screen was sort of slow to react and quite basic in its functionality and appearance, but you can't apply that same criticism to this MG4, I think, at all, because the screen is massively stepped up in terms of, firstly, what it offers, the speed of response, the list of features. It's a completely different car altogether, completely different system.
I have to remark on these sort of toggle switches on the steering wheel. They remind me of something like an old Nintendo PlayStation thing. I don't know, there's 2 different things, I get that, but it's really odd that it just sort of moves around. It's kind of, it's something you got to use to feel. It's kind of old school, and I think they must have raided some Nintendo bin for it. It's great.
While we're on that note, and actually the quite liberal use of piano black plastic in the cabin is a hark back almost for me to the days of the PSP and the PlayStation 3, and their gloss black plastic appearances. And there is certainly plenty of that around here to make the cabin feel a little bit more plush, but at the same time I can't help but feel that it will attract a lot of fingerprints and scratches, particularly as quite a bit of it has been used in places like the window switches, around the handles, around the buttons, areas of high contact and general use.
Especially if I'm eating my Big Mac and then just running my fingers around. But anyway, the regen or actually drive mode levels are really good. So you can go eco, you can go sport, you can go. There's just range. And it does alter the range, and also the one pedal driving I really enjoy. It's really good. And on the matter of range, I've got here since plug-in 205 kilometers, and I'm averaging around 19 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, and there's still 121 kilometers left on 35% battery. So even driving like a bit of an idiot, which I tend to, and also, you know, testing out its 0 to 100s and things like that, it's actually giving plenty of range. That's I don't know, almost 400 k's worth of range. Not bad. I have to use my fingers for that.
Well, more like mid 300s, but still, you know, Dave has been using sport mode and the more sort of aggressive modes, if you like, a lot to test all for research purposes, of course. Yeah, to test the dynamic capabilities of this MG4, and I mean, it's impressed us both in the way it handles, keeps its composure around corners, but then at the same time feels really usable for the cities, you know, where you need to firstly park in smaller spaces, you need to do U-turns on a dime. It just does that effortlessly.
Yeah, it does have a really nice turning circle. Steering feels lovely weight to it. There's a fair amount of feedback. It is still, you know, semi-EV-ish as far as that goes. The wind noise is minimal, road noise is minimal, is there as you can possibly hear, but this is a particularly coarse road. But it's, all in all, it's a really nice cabin. The seats are incredibly comfortable. I really like that, and actually reasonably supportive, and all round it's a nice driving car.
Yep, couldn't agree more.
So there you have it, the new MG4, a very affordable EV. Things I like about it, the fact you just sit in and away you go. So it's you don't need to start it up, it's already going, you just twist and go. The biggest thing or biggest drawback for me, I think, is the cameras. They sort of look like a porthole on moving forward and back, but then you do have the 360 degrees, so very good from there. It's a all-round, well put together, reasonably, you know, warm hatch.
Absolutely, and offers plenty of value for your money, and I think plenty of customization and individuality as well, especially in this volcano orange color.
Volcano orange, that very well British sounding thing. Anyway, thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe. It will be around here somewhere, and we'll see you on the next one. See you.